Hi, everyone. I am Kate Byers. Welcome to the Success Without Sacrifice show. Today, we are going to talk about how you can disconnect from the stress at work with ease. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back everyone to the show. Today we are talking about how to disconnect with ease. I am Kate Byers, and with me today we have Jadine Cleary, who is the Director of Performance Coaching here at the Good Life Institute. Welcome, Jadine. Disconnecting is a hot topic for our audience. I'm excited to jump into this today.
Yeah, me too, Kate. If we can't disconnect, we can't actually enjoy our life.
Yes. And I love this because, we talk so much about needing more time, but if the time we're spending in our private lives is spent festering, focused, worried, anxiety, guilt-ridden, or vice versa, if the time we spend at work is having those things, then, that's not really what we're talking. When we talk about disconnect, we're talking about disconnecting from that stress. So you're fully focused on whatever you're doing. And this is essential. I don't know if you're someone who is certainly in the executive levels of your career, you are going to have quite a lot of stress. You're going to have a lot of challenges. As you know, ladies, there's a lot of gray that goes on, not a lot of black and white. That takes a lot of thinking, a lot of, brain matter. And if you don't know how to disconnect from that, what happens is eventually our brain says, I've had enough. And that's when, we burn out, we walk away, we collapse, on the couch at night with a bottle of, Chardonnay or whatever, and just sort of like try to disconnect in different ways that are not as healthy, right? So what we really want to talk about, and this is important, if you are in the medical field, right? If you're an attorney and you're trying these difficult cases, like how do you not bring that home? And a lot of times we talk about disconnecting the ways of compartmentalizing. I think there's something to that, but a lot of times compartmentalizing isn't exactly what we want to do. What we want to be able to do. So here's the goal. The goal is this. The goal is your phone is ringing. It is on your kitchen counter and you have just decided to go jump on your Peloton for a workout and you just walk past your phone and it doesn't bother you. And you have this amazing workout and you get a good sweat. And then do you run off to your phone? No. Then what you do is you go jump in the shower and then you put on your favorite, lounge clothes for the evening or whatever. And then you decide, do I want to go back to my phone and see who was calling or not? That's what I'm talking about disconnecting. So the first thing is we want to understand that disconnecting really is 3 different levels. I think most of us understand that disconnecting is physical. And some really common ways of disconnecting would be, leaving your phone in your purse, turning off the ringer, making sure you pull off, work email off your phone, putting your laptop out in the car, not bringing it home, going for a run, I'm going to go for a run and these things that are like these strategies to protect yourself from always working. But that's just the physical piece, okay? Separating yourself from your office or your work environment. The next level is you also have to be mentally disconnected. So mentally means not thinking about work. Does that make sense? So for example, you could be at home, you have disconnected from work, but the whole time you're thinking about work, right? So your partner's talking to you and you're like, I have no idea what they just said. Your kids are like, Mommy, play with me. Like, there's been times in my past where I have read my children an entire bedtime story and I have no clue what I read them, right? Because the whole time my mind's thinking about whatever, like the list of chores that I have to do or the office and all these things. So we want to really carve out that mental connection. That's important for disconnecting. If you're going to have some longevity and sustainability in operating at this level and have a glorious private life, right? And then the third piece, and this is probably, they're all equally important, but this is really significant. You also have to be emotionally disconnected. And what I mean by that is imagine you come home, you're physically disconnected from the office. You're going to watch a family movie. So now you're mentally engaged. You're watching some big epic film or whatever it is, something you truly enjoy, not like, the millionth episode of whatever, Frozen, right? And so you're really enjoying the movie. And then you're emotionally not sitting there going tick, 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 anxiety, 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 guilt, 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 feeling discomfort, moving in your chair. Like you're in the movie, you're certainly paying attention to it and you're able to engage and have dialogue with your family, but emotionally you're not feeling in flow, you're not feeling satisfied, you're not feeling happy, you're feeling uptight, nervous, impatient, anxiety, ready to go. That is still a strong emotional connection with work. So it takes all three of those things to disconnect with ease. If not, you're sort of like, yeah, I disconnected. I came home at 5 o'clock. Well, it doesn't really matter if the whole time you were either anxious, guilty, or, thinking about work, right?
Even when you're talking and you give your examples, I can feel a physical response as you say your words, because so many of us are used to living in that state. And for most of our clients, when they actually learn how to upgrade their emotional state, this is when life gets really good. And this is when life gets really good personally and also professionally. Because the other piece is when we're living in that level of exhaustion, it actually affects our ability to make quick and good decisions. So to your point, when we can understand how to disconnect and then have connection with what's important to us, our brain actually gets a break. And then when we come back, we're able to be the most effective we want to be. And I was talking to one of our clients this morning, and she talked about how now that she understands how to live from this full place and live according to her needs, she was able to do a full day. At the end of her day, she decided, to your point, she went to go do a workout. She's like, I think I need a workout. And then after that, she decided, I'm going to go see my boyfriend. Let's do something spontaneous and go for dinner. And then she said, before, I would have actually been hard on myself because I would have felt like I was procrastinating work. But now I understood that those emails could wait and I was going to fulfill what was important to me. And then after all of that, she went back and did 2 hours of work and she was focused and happy and she went to bed totally fulfilled.
Yes. And I'm so glad you said fulfilled, because honestly, if you don't get this right, if you don't dial this in, ladies, that fulfillment piece will constantly evade you. And then what happens is you're always chasing, the next thing. Like, oh, as soon as my team gets up to speed, or as soon as the merger acquisition is complete, or as soon as I change bosses, change jobs, get a promotion, like what happens is that fulfillment piece never is there. And then we're like, oh my gosh, I'm in this gilded cage because you're so exhausted mentally and emotionally. And the reason this happens, especially to women, men have this too, but we are constantly proving ourselves. So women, we have so wrapped up our identity in our work that our emotional self, how we value ourselves, is so wrapped up in what we do versus who we are, that it's keeping us in this emotional state of constant anxiety, right? And that's why I call it like little butterflies of happiness. Like what would happen to me is I would work really hard on a project and, I'd save the company all this money or make the company all this money or get across the goal line. And then I'd have this moment. It was like a Saturday when all of a sudden it was like I could spend time with my daughter and we'd be at the farm riding horses and then we'd go to a picnic and it was like, oh, life is grand. Boom. And then Monday would hit. Well, actually, it was usually Sunday night for me, because then Sunday night was like I was gearing up for the week, right? And then here comes the anxiety, here comes the hard, here comes the tension. And for such a long time, what I did was I kept convincing myself that the only way for me to succeed as an executive in marketing was to be always on, right? Like that's where that comes, that emotional attachment. My identity was, Kate, you're a high achiever. You're a driven woman. Ambitious, driven people, they work hard. They're always on. They're always thinking. They're always putting the company first. And because I wore that as such a badge of, confidence. It's what gave me this confidence or helped me feel good about who I was in this position. That emotional piece, I could never disconnect because I was identifying as, Kate, you're high value because you're always on, and someone who's always on deserves to have the reward of her place at the table. And if you're always on, Kate, they can't take it away from you. And if you all are listening to my words and sort of cutting through it, what I'm really talking about is operating from a place of fear versus fulfillment.
And Kate, when we operate from that place, it's exhausting. And what's really interesting in working with Olympic athletes too, the ones who are skilled and who are able to sustain performance for a very long period of time understand that rest and being able to emotionally disconnect is part of the identity of being a successful Olympic athlete. So once they start to build their global identity and recognize they are valuable for who they are, and rest is an important component, then they are able to actually master their energy levels in order to be able to dial it in and dial it back when it's important.
Yeah. And I think, probably everyone's wondering, like, how do you do that? How do you do that? And there's a myriad of ways. Some of them tougher than others. So a lot of what we see in our culture today are what I'm going to call positive self-talk, right? So think about your emotional self in this way. We've been taught that, first of all, emotions are either bad or good, and they're really not. They're just emotions. You can cry. It's okay, ladies. You can be angry. Like, all of emotions are doing is they're directing you towards a need that requires some attention. Okay. So think of it this way. I get invited to speak in public, and let's just say, for a lot of us, that makes us really nervous. So let's just say it makes me really nervous. I'm going to have anxiety. I'm really nervous. And so as women, what we do is we start talking, and we start festering, and we start telling everybody, I've got to do a presentation. What do you think I should do? And then we start over preparing for the presentation and creating the slides. And all of this is being driven by emotion, right? And then I'm telling my husband 18 times a day, oh my gosh, the presentation's coming up. And what if I don't do well? And then I'm calling all my girlfriends and telling them. And so what's happening is I have this thing coming up that's creating this emotion. And one of the ways to get over that is to just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, right? You could go to a therapist and just talk a lot. Therapists love that. That's what they do, right? A lot of talk therapy. At the same time, though, that's a lot of time and energy that we're putting forth to this. And if you are like listening to this broadcast, you're probably a woman who's like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to talk and talk and talk and fester about an upcoming presentation that I'm nervous about. I need to accept the invite to the presentation. I need to write the presentation quickly and accurately that will be, nail it on the head with the audience. And I need to get up there and just do it. So you could talk and talk and talk about it. And eventually what that tells the brain is you've just talked yourself through this emotion so much that eventually the brain's like, okay, enough. I'm done talking about it. But that's not a really effective way because it takes a ton of time. It wears out everyone around you, and or you're having to hire a therapist and go to therapy, X times a week. And I know for myself and for the women we work with, we're like, I don't have 2 years to work on this issue. Like, I want to get to the goal line. So you can do talk therapy. You can do positive self-talk. And this is where, you're standing up in the mirror going, I'm great. I'm great. I'm great. I'm great. I'm going to be great in the presentation. Look at me. I'm great, great, great. And you're just continuing to sort of like try to like fake it till you make it in the mirror, if you will, like this positive self-talk. You put notes all over your office. You're an amazing presenter, Kate. Again, you can do that. It just takes a lot longer because you're conditioning your mind only for one thing, which is, okay, Kate, that presentation's coming up, get your confidence in order. And that might carry me through. I'm not saying some of those strategies are not okay to try. I'm just saying it's not solving it on a global level for you. It's just going to get me through that next presentation. And then by the time I get invited to the second presentation, I got to do it all over again. You could use things like exposure, like almost like exposure response therapy, where you show up for the presentation. And obviously the first time you present in public is far more terrifying than your 10,000th time. So by the time you get to the 10,000th time, you're like, oh, presentation, no big deal. But again, all of these things take a ton of time, right? You're faking it till you make it, and it uses a ton of willpower. Like, I don't know how many of you have noticed, but willpower is like a muscle. And it is, have you ever been like, I don't know, lifting weights, right? You're doing reps, rep 8, no sweat, rep 9, no sweat. All of a sudden you go to do rep 10, you're like, oh my God, I can't even lift the weight. It's just like you have nothing left. That's what willpower is. And so don't beat yourself up for not having willpower, because at some point willpower will run out and you literally fall off the cliff. And so what happens is we use all this energy to prop ourselves up to get to the big presentation. And then you do the presentation and you get through it. And then all the adrenaline leaves your body. You're exhausted. Meanwhile, your spouse never wants to talk to you again. Your children haven't seen you in 3 weeks. Excuse me. And then afterwards you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad, was it? And you've left bodies in your wake, as well as wasted a lot of your precious life, right? So what we really want to do here is we want to start saying, I don't want to use a ton of willpower. I don't want to use a ton of time. I want to start working on how I identify emotionally with work. And that comes down to understanding, ladies, that proving yourself over and over again is not how you want to show up in the office. And I don't care, again, if you're a CEO, if you're a surgeon, if you're a senior manager, or somewhere in between, being someone who has to constantly prove and control and, show up in a way that you are, omnipresent, that is emotional connection with your work that is not ever going to allow you full disconnection. But when you show up and say, I am valuable for who I am. If something blows up at the office at 7:00 at night, I get to choose whether I take the phone call, don't take the phone call, take it later in the night, wait till the next morning. It doesn't matter. I'm valuable for who I am. I've been put in this chair because I am valuable for who I am, how I think, not for being always on 24/7. And that is starting to condition a new level of emotional consistency.
Hey, what you said, how I identify myself with work is so key, because this sits at all of it. The true definition of charisma is somebody who doesn't care what other people think of them. They know their worth from themselves inside out, and that's compelling. So when somebody's also operating from the standpoint of they feel they need to prove themselves all the time, it actually builds less influence. So when we're able to know how to process emotion and not just suppress it, then we're able actually to work through the emotion, recognize we're valuable for who we are, and then we show up differently. So not only are we more open, we're more flexible because we're not so rigidly trying to hold on to proving ourselves. We're actually open to seeing possibilities, and we're open to see other ways of doing things. That's compelling.
It is. And, it reminds me, I always love telling the story. I call it the story of Mr. Butter. I used to work with this guy who was a exec, a level or two above me, and we'd get called into these meetings. And Mr. Butter, I called him Mr. Butter because it seemed like everything just sort of like slid off his hands and into my lap. But he would come to the meetings and he would listen a lot. He was curious a lot. He was not the senior leader. There was the C-suite that were, talking and telling us, here's the problem and the challenge and the sky is falling and all the stuff that happens, right? And Mr. Butter would listen and he might make some comments. He might make some suggestions. He would ask some questions. He always came off, intelligent, knew his lane, knew what he was doing. And then he would walk out. And I was like, and then they would be like, Kate, did you take notes? And I'd be like, yeah, I sure did. And they're like, awesome, Kate. Well, get to work. And I'd be like, how in the heck am I the one constantly walking out with the work? And Mr. Butter's just like going back to his team and doing what he always does. And I'm not saying that the guy didn't, pull some all-nighters and things. Like he did, but within his lane. I was the person that was just catching every ball, constantly working, always on. And it was because Mr. Butter had a healthy emotional relationship with work. He understood his value. And his value was coming in as an advisor, as someone who's curious, as someone who is helping the C-suite get some clarity, who is asking great questions. And then he went to out and went fishing after work or whatever he did. You know what I'm saying? Played with his kids. I don't know. He didn't value, I have to now pick up this challenge that the C-suite's just told me and I have to solve it for them because that's how I'm going to be valuable. He's like, no, I'm valuable because I'm me. He wasn't trying to prove himself. And so keep that in mind, ladies, because when I say you're trying to prove yourself, I'm not saying you're, this insecure mop of a person who's sitting in the corner that has no confidence. Like, that's not it. Like you are who you are and you have come to the position that you're in because you know how to get things done and you have a level of confidence that's, I'm sure, far exceeds many around you. It's more that internal programming. And you know what I'm talking about, where it's like, oh my gosh, if I don't go to this meeting, I might get cut out of the deal. If I don't travel and get on that airplane, then, maybe I won't be as relevant. It's those thoughts. It doesn't always feel like a fear. Like it's not like you're trembling in the corner crying. It could be, sometimes it is. A lot of times it's just those thoughts of like, no, I better go there because, I've got to have FaceTime with so-and-so. Do you? You know what I'm saying? Do you? Or I better pick up that phone because if not, my boss is going to think I don't really care about, this project, or they might be upset that I'm not as loyal or whatever. So a lot of times these feelings of trying to prove yourself or these emotional attachments, it's not you actually sitting in the corner trembling. It's these ways that it comes out, which says like, oh, I better answer the phone or my boss will be upset, or, oh gosh, I would hate to have a problem and call someone at night and not get a response. come on, really? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how many times have you reached out to someone and they didn't get back to you right away? And you might have been frustrated for a minute and then you get past it. So Mr. Butter was really demonstrating to me, this is what it means to feel valuable. I can walk in the room, provide an opinion, and walk back out and not feel guilty and not feel bad and know that I am still valuable. That's why they put me in this chair, not because I'm going to say yes and, pick up the phone every time someone calls me. And it's really, really critical, ladies, that you understand this and you start putting this into your behavior, because if not, you will constantly be chasing freedom, fulfillment, and fun. Like, there's just no way, if you're going to be that strongly emotionally attached to your job, to ever find enough time or enough breaks or have someone else give you permission to live the life you want.
Mm-hmm. And then you'll constantly be the workhorse and not the wizard, because you're operating from that place. And the workhorse gets tired, and the workhorse doesn't get recognition, and the workhorse doesn't get to live the big, beautiful, bold life.
That's right. The wizard does. The magician. Oh my gosh. JD, that's like the money statement. Does everybody hear that right there? Mr. Butter was the wizard and I was the mule, and I got paid trading time for dollars. He was getting paid for his value, right? And there's so many more things that come into it, from compensation to positions to promotions to just how people react to you when you understand and you have a different emotional relationship with, one of our clients said that once, that she said, Kate, I just need a different emotional relationship with my career. And I'm like, yeah, you do. And it's just like, it is so golden when you dial this in. I mean, literally, things can blow up. Clients can be furious with you and say, I'm getting ready to fire you because of this mistake from someone on your team that you missed. And you're like, okay, got it. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate it. Let me take a look at it and I'm going to get back to you, first thing in the morning. And then, you might take an extra 45 minutes that night to kind of go through some evidence and see what happened, get to a place where you can shut it down. And then you run off and you play with your kids, or you jump on the Peloton, or you read the book you want to, because that tomorrow, whatever happens with that client who's getting ready to fire you and is so angry, is probably going to not be quite as, tragic in the morning when everyone slept on it, but also that you're valuable for who you are, and that sometimes mistakes happen, even big ones, and that you can get past it, but you're valuable for who you are, not for being someone who's flawless, never makes a mistake, or missed a meeting, or didn't answer a phone, and all these things. It just becomes like, okay, great, we're going to tackle it and we'll get on it in the morning. Meanwhile, I'm going to refresh myself and live a big life, because tomorrow morning I want to be my best self when I do have to tackle this big, hairy problem. So if that sounds like the best life ever, ladies, then I want you to pay very close attention, because we have something very special for you. It is very important for everyone who's listening to start dialing in and understanding how you, in your environment, can disconnect with ease. All right, so how we can help you is our team has set aside time to speak with you personally about your specific career, what you can do to apply these ideas about disconnecting across your career and life in the next 72 hours, okay? It's a 45-minute conversation. It's absolutely free, okay? On the call, we're going to chat about what is working in your career, what's not, where is the stress, where is the inability to disconnect coming from, and what you can do to start disconnecting with ease. Now, the call is confidential, and it is a rare opportunity to speak to a woman who's walked in your shoes, right? And knows exactly how to solve for what you're dealing with. It is definitely one of the best things you can do. Probably one of the best hours you can invest in yourself and your career, all year. So please go to goodlifeinstitute.org/call. That's goodlifeinstitute.org/call, and find a time that'll work for you. And our team will be happy to meet you at the time that you've selected. Again, it's goodlifeinstitute.org/call. Grab a time that works for you, and we're delighted to speak with you about your career and how you can disconnect with ease so you don't have to suffer for success 1 second longer. Step back, take a sabbatical, or any of those other things. All right? So that is it for today's show, and we will see you next time. Hi, thanks for tuning into today's show. If you want to subscribe, you can do that by clicking the little picture of me over there. If you want to book a breakthrough call, which you absolutely should do, you can click the button below or go to goodlifeinstitute.org/call to book an appointment to speak to us. I'll see you on the next show.